I've been an ER doctor at Mount Sinai for 11 years. I've held the hands of dying strangers. I've told mothers their sons didn't make it. I've stitched up knife wounds, gunshot wounds, wounds so deep I could see bone. I thought I'd seen every kind of pain this city could throw at a person. I was wrong. It was 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday when the ambulance radio started screaming, "Multi-vehicle collision on the FDR Drive. Multiple casualties. ETA 4 minutes. All hands on deck." I was already exhausted 10 hours into a double shift, living off vending machine coffee and pure spite, but you don't think about tired when the sirens start wailing. You just move. The first stretcher came flying through those doors like a freight train. Male, mid-30s. Blunt force trauma to the chest and head. BP dropping fast. I was already pulling on fresh gloves, my brain switching into that cold, clinical mode that's kept me alive in this job. I grabbed the chart, barely glanced at the name. Then I looked down, and the entire world stopped. Ethan. My husband. My Ethan. Lying there, unconscious, blood matting his dark hair, his face his face bruised and swelling on the left side. The same face that had kissed me goodbye 3 days ago before his business trip to Boston. My hands started shaking, the clipboard slipped, someone caught it. "Dr. Hart? You good?" I couldn't answer. Couldn't breathe. Because I was staring at the wedding ring on his finger, the one I'd slipped on 6 years ago in a courthouse downtown because we were young and broke and so stupidly in love we couldn't wait for a real wedding. "Dr. Hart." My voice cracked. "I know him." The charge nurse, Rita, was beside me in seconds. She took one look at my face, then at Ethan, and her expression shifted from confusion to something harder. Understanding. "Get Dr. Morrison," she said quietly to someone behind me. "Now." But I couldn't move, because the second stretcher was crashing through the doors. Female, late 20s, pregnant, approximately 32 weeks, involved in the same accident, possible placental abruption, she's in bad shape. They wheeled her past me into Bay 4, right next to Ethan. I don't know what made me follow. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was something darker, some part of my brain that had already connected dots I didn't want to see. I walked into that bay like I was walking toward a cliff edge. The woman was young. Beautiful, even bleeding and broken, long blonde hair spilling off the stretcher. And her left hand was clutching her swollen belly like she could protect the baby inside through sheer will. I reached for her chart. Patient name, Lila Hart. Emergency contact, Ethan Hart. Relationship, husband. The room tilted. Someone was talking to me, Rita, maybe, or one of the residents, but I couldn't hear anything over the roaring in my ears, over the sound of my entire life cracking down the middle like ice on a frozen lake. Lila Hart. Hart. My last name. His last name. Pregnant. 32 weeks. I did the math without thinking, because that's what your brain does when it's trying to protect you from the truth. It focuses on stupid, irrelevant details. 32 weeks. That's 8 months. Which means she got pregnant in March. When Ethan took me to the Poconos for our anniversary. When he told me he loved me, that I was his whole world, that we'd start trying for a baby soon, once my schedule calmed down. While I was saving lives, he was making one with someone else. "Dr. Hart," Rita's hand was on my shoulder, firm, "you need to step out, now." But I couldn't. Because Lila's eyes had fluttered open, unfocused and glassy with pain, and she was looking around wildly, panicking. "Ethan," she gasped. Where's my husband Ethan?" Her voice. I'd heard that voice before. On Ethan's phone, 6 months ago. A saved voicemail I'd accidentally played while looking for my own message. A woman laughing, saying something about, "Can't wait to see you next week and bring those files from the office." He'd told me it was his new assistant. That she was just being friendly. Lila Hart wasn't his assistant. She was his wife. "Ma'am, you need to stay calm," one of the nurses was saying, trying to get an IV into her arm while she thrashed. "Your baby. I need Ethan." She was crying now, real tears cutting through the blood on her face. "Please, someone tell me he's okay, please." And that's when I felt it. That cold crystalline clarity that comes right before you do something that will change everything. When shock burns away and leaves something harder behind, something surgical. I stepped forward, put my hand on her wrist, looked right into her terrified, beautiful eyes, and smiled. "He's right next door," I said softly. "I'll make sure you're both taken care of." She looked at me with such desperate gratitude it almost made me laugh. "Thank you," she sobbed. "Thank you so much." Rita was staring at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. But as I walked out of that bay, past my unconscious husband, past the organized chaos of the ER, I felt something slot into place inside my chest, something that felt an awful lot like purpose. They were both in my hospital, in my ER, under my care. And for the first time in 11 years, I realized something. Sometimes God doesn't send you signs. He sends you opportunities. I pulled out my phone, texted my lawyer, the one who'd handled my mother's estate last year. "Need to see you. Tomorrow. It's urgent." Then I deleted the message thread, walked back into the controlled chaos of the night shift, and got to work. The smell hit me first. Antiseptic, blood, that sharp metallic tang that clings to the back of your throat, but underneath it so faint, I almost imagined it was something else. Ethan's cologne. That woody, expensive scent I'd saved up 3 months of resident salary to buy him for our first anniversary. My hands moved on autopilot, checking Lila's vitals, adjusting her IV drip. But my mind was somewhere else entirely. 12 years ago, I met Ethan Hart in a coffee shop in Hell's Kitchen. I was a second-year resident, running on 4 hours of sleep and spite. He was getting his MBA at Columbia, buried under textbooks, looking lost. Our coffees got mixed up at the counter, both black, both extra hot, and when our hands touched reaching for the same cup, he looked up at me and smiled. God, that smile. "Guess we have the same terrible taste," he'd said. I married him 8 months later. Everyone said we were crazy. My attending told me I was throwing away my career. My mother, practical, pragmatic, asked me if I was sure I wanted to tie myself to a man who was still figuring out his life while I was already saving lives. But I was sure. I'd never been more sure of anything. So when Ethan got accepted to his graduate program with no funding, I picked up extra shifts. When his student loans came due, I used my signing bonus from Mount Sinai to pay them off. When he needed quiet time to study for his comprehensive exams, I worked nights so he could have the apartment to himself during the day. I remember packing his lunches at 5 a.m. before my shift turkey sandwiches cut diagonal because he said they tasted better that way. I remember him calling me at 2 a.m., stressed about a presentation, and I'd talk him down while standing in a hospital supply closet between traumas. "You're going to be amazing," I'd whisper. "You're going to change the world." I believed that. God help me, I really believed that. 3 years in, his mother got sick. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 6 months, maybe 8, if she was lucky. Ethan fell apart, completely. He couldn't handle hospitals, couldn't handle the smell of disease, couldn't handle watching her fade. So I did it. I rearranged my schedule, called in every favor I had, and I sat with Margaret Hart through every chemo session, every bad night, every moment she needed someone to hold her hand. She died on a Tuesday morning in November, with me reading her poetry because Ethan was too broken to come. Her last words were, "Take care of my boy." I promised I would. I kept that promise, even when it cost me everything else. The house in Astoria, the little brownstone with the blue door that Ethan loved, I bought that with my inheritance from my grandmother. 20 years she'd been saving, penny by penny, so her granddaughter could have something solid under her feet. I spent it all on a down payment, so Ethan could have his dream home. "We'll fill it with kids someday," he'd said, standing in the empty living room on moving day. "A whole bunch of them. I want to hear little feet running down these stairs." I was 31 then. My attending had just asked me if I wanted to try for a fellowship in trauma surgery, a career-making opportunity, but Ethan wanted me home more, wanted to start trying for those kids. So I said no to the fellowship. We started trying. 1 year passed. Then 2. Then 3. Every month, the same disappointment. Every month, Ethan pulling away a little more. "Maybe we should just wait," he'd say. "Focus on our careers. There's time." But I was 35 by then. 36, time wasn't infinite anymore. "Not now," became his favorite phrase. "Not now, Amara, not now." I stood there in Bay 4, watching Lila Hart's monitor beep steadily, watching the life inside her, his life, their life fight to survive. 32 weeks pregnant. Everything I'd wanted, everything I'd sacrificed for, given to someone else. If you've ever given everything to someone who later turned away, you'll understand this part. You'll understand the specific kind of death that happens inside your chest when you realize all those years, all that love, all that faith was spent on someone who was building a different life behind your back. Thank you to everyone who helps keep these stories alive. Every word you share, every act of kindness helps protect those who still believe in family, those who still believe in the promises we make. Rita appeared at my elbow. Dr. Morrison's here. He's taking over both patients. You need to go home. I didn't move. Because Lila was waking up again, her hand moving to her belly, her lips forming his name. Ethan, Ethan, Ethan. The same name I'd whispered into the dark for 12 years. The same name I'd put before my own dreams. My own body. My own future. And suddenly, I understood something with perfect, terrible clarity. Every sacrifice I'd made had built the life he wanted. Just not with me. I stepped back from the bed, pulled off my gloves, and walked out of that bay with my head high and my heart in pieces on the floor. But I didn't cry. Not yet. Because crying was for people who'd already decided to surrender. And I was just getting started. I went home at 6 a.m. Dr. Morrison had taken over. Rita physically walked me to the exit. The November air hit my face like a slap, cold and sharp, but I barely felt it. I took the subway. Sat between a guy in a construction vest and a woman in scrubs like mine. Normal people. Living normal lives. While mine had just detonated in an ER bay under fluorescent lights. By the time I got to our brownstone, the sun was coming up over Astoria, painting everything gold. I unlocked the door. And that's when I saw it. The suitcase. Sitting by the stairs, half-packed. Men's clothes folded neatly inside Ethan's work shirts, the cashmere sweater I'd bought him last Christmas, still with the tags on because he said he was saving it for something special. I stood there, staring. Then I walked upstairs. My bedroom looked like it had been staged. Closet half empty. Dresser drawers open. But it was the nightstand that made my stomach drop. A stack of papers. Real estate documents. For this house. The house I'd bought with my grandmother's money. Transfer of deed, prepared by his lawyer, dated 3 weeks ago. My name struck through. Lila Hart's name typed in. I sat down on the bed. The bed where I'd slept alone most nights while he worked late, and I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The papers shook in my hands. He was going to take my house. The house my grandmother died to give me. And give it to her. My phone rang. Ethan. Calling from the hospital. I answered. Amara. His voice was rough, panicked. Amara. Please. I need you to listen. I'm listening. My voice didn't sound like mine. Too calm, too cold. It's not God. It's not what it looks like. Really? I looked down at the deed transfer in my lap. So you weren't about to steal my house and move your pregnant mistress into it? Silence. Then. I was going to tell you. I needed time to figure out how. How long, Ethan? What? How long have you been married to her? More silence. Then, quietly. 14 months. 14 months. The room spun. I'd been working double shifts, sleeping 4 hours a night, coming home to an empty house, thinking my husband was traveling for work, building our future, while he was building a whole other life. The baby? I asked. My voice cracked. Is it yours? I think so. Yeah, probably. Probably. I hung up. Sat there in the golden morning light, holding the deed to my own house, and I felt something inside me go very, very quiet. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Dr. Hart, this is Detective Mike Chen. You treated my daughter 2 years ago after her car accident. I heard what happened at the hospital. I think you should know some things. Can we talk? I stared at the message. Then I called him. 40 minutes later, I was sitting in a diner in Long Island City, across from a man in his 50s with kind eyes and a manila folder. I did some digging, Chen said quietly, sliding the folder across the table. After I heard the nurses talking. I'm sorry, Dr. Hart. You deserve to know. I opened it. And everything got worse. Lila Hart, real name Lila Brennan, 27 years old, a history that read like a true crime podcast, 3 engagements to wealthy men in the past 5 years. All broken off right after she'd gotten access to joint accounts, property deeds, credit cards. She'd been sued twice for fraud. Charges dropped both times when the men were too embarrassed to testify. There were bank statements, Ethan's accounts, $50,000 withdrawn over 6 months. Transferred to accounts in Lila's name. My money. Money I'd earned in the ER, in the ICU, holding together people's insides while mine were being hollowed out. The pregnancy, Chen said gently. We can't be sure. But the timeline doesn't match what your husband thinks. She was seeing another man, a developer in Manhattan, until 3 months before she met Ethan. I looked up at him. You think the baby isn't his. I think she's a professional, Dr. Hart. And I think you were the target all along. The house, your income, your reputation. He paused. I'm sorry. If you've ever trusted someone so deeply that their betrayal made you question your own worth, you're not alone. You're not crazy. You're not weak for believing in someone you loved. Thank you to everyone who helps me tell these stories. Your support keeps this space alive for those who still believe that truth, somehow, will always find its way. I closed the folder, stood up, shook Detective Chen's hand. Thank you, I said quietly. What are you going to do? I looked out the diner window at the city waking up, at the people rushing to work, to life, to whatever came next. And I smiled. Not a kind smile. I'm going to save them both, I said. Chen's eyes widened slightly. What? I'm a doctor, detective. It's what I do. I walked out into the cold morning air. And for the first time in 12 years, I felt absolutely, perfectly clear about who I was. Not Ethan Hart's wife. Not the woman who sacrificed everything. Just Amara. And Amara had work to do. I didn't go back to work for 3 days. Called in sick for the first time in 6 years. Rita didn't ask questions, just said, "Take care of yourself, honey," and hung up. I sat in the house. My house. The one I bought with money my grandmother had saved working double shifts as a seamstress in the Bronx. The one with the blue door Ethan loved. The hardwood floors I'd refinished myself during my rare days off. The kitchen where I'd made him breakfast every Sunday for 12 years. It was so quiet. I never noticed before how quiet a house could be, how the refrigerator hums, how the radiator clicks, how the floorboards settle and creak like they're trying to tell you something. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten dinner 3 nights before he left for his business trip, where he'd kissed my forehead and said, "I'll miss you." While his suitcase sat packed by the stairs, while his lawyer finalized the deed transfer, while his other wife waited for him in a condo I didn't even know existed. His coffee mug was still in the sink. I'd been too tired to wash it that morning. Now I couldn't touch it. Couldn't bring myself to erase that last piece of evidence that he'd been here, been real, been mine. The anniversary card sat on the counter. Half finished. I'd been working on it between shifts, trying to find the right words to tell him how much these 12 years had meant. To my Ethan. Thank you for being my home. For being the reason I wake up. For being... I never finished it. Good thing, probably. My phone kept buzzing, texts from numbers I didn't recognize. The hospital grapevine worked faster than any emergency protocol. Is it true? Oh my God, Amara, I'm so sorry. If you need anything. I turned it off. The silence got heavier. I walked upstairs. My bedroom still smelled like his cologne. His side of the closet was half empty, but enough remained that I could pretend he was just away, just traveling. Just coming back. I lay down on his side of the bed. Pressed my face into his pillow. And I didn't cry. That was the strangest part. I kept waiting for the tears, for the breakdown, for the dramatic collapse they show in movies. But there was nothing. Just this vast, echoing emptiness where my heart used to be. I saved her life. That thought kept circling back, over and over. I'd stood in that operating room after Dr. Morrison stabilized her, after the real crisis passed, and I'd assisted. I'd held retractors. I'd sutured. I'd done my job with the same precision and care I'd give any patient. I saved the life of the woman carrying my husband's child. The woman who'd stolen my money, my house, my name, and I'd done it perfectly. Because that's what I do. That's who I am. I save people. Even the ones destroying me. The irony tasted like metal in my mouth. On the 3rd day, I heard voices outside. Neighbors, Mrs. Chen from 2 doors down, talking to someone on the sidewalk. I couldn't hear the words, just the tone. That hushed, gossipy tone people use when they're talking about tragedy. About you. I closed the curtains. If you've ever sat in a room so quiet it started to echo your thoughts, you'll understand this silence, the way it presses against your chest. The way it makes you question everything you thought you knew about yourself. Thank you to those who help keep these stories alive. Your kindness helps give voice to people who've been forgotten, who sit alone in their pain, waiting to be seen again. I made coffee at 2 a.m. because I couldn't sleep. Sat at that table again. And I thought about all the questions I should have asked, all the signs I'd missed because I was too tired, too trusting, too busy saving other people's lives to notice my own was bleeding out. The late-night conference calls. The new cologne. The way he stopped reaching for me in bed. The credit card bills he said were for client dinners. How could I have been so blind? I was a doctor. I diagnosed people for a living. Read symptoms. Saw patterns. Connected dots that others missed. But I'd missed this. Missed everything. My phone still off sat on the counter like a dead thing. Eventually I'd have to turn it on. Eventually I'd have to face the lawyers, the questions, the paperwork of dissolving a life. But not yet. Not in this silence. Outside, the city was waking up. Garbage trucks rumbling. Car alarms. Someone's dog barking. The world moving forward like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I looked down at my hands, the same hands that had saved Lila Hart's life, that had paid off Ethan's debts, that had cared for his dying mother. That had built this entire life, brick by brick, shift by shift, sacrifice by sacrifice. And I realized something. These hands were still mine. This house was still mine. This life broken, hollow, echoing with loss was still mine. He'd taken so much. My money, my trust, my dreams of children, my belief that love, when given fully, would be honored. But he hadn't taken everything. I stood up, walked to the window, pulled back the curtain and let the morning light pour in. I wasn't ready yet, wasn't healed, wasn't even close to okay. But I was still standing. And sometimes, that's enough. On the fourth morning, I turned my phone back on. 63 missed calls, 47 texts, 12 voicemails. I ignored them all and called Mount Sinai's medical records department. Hi Sarah, it's Dr. Hart. I need to request patient files under the spousal access clause. Ethan Hart. Any private clinic visits in the past 18 months? There was a pause. Dr. Hart. Are you sure you want to? I'm sure. The files arrived by secure email 2 hours later. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and a cup of coffee that went cold while I read. Ethan had been visiting a private fertility clinic in Manhattan, with Lila, for 14 months. The same 14 months they'd been married. The same time period he kept telling me not now, every time I brought up trying again. There were consultation notes. Genetic counseling, preconception vitamins prescribed. Payment records all from a joint account I didn't know existed, funded by transfers from our savings. My savings. $53,000. Gone. I opened my banking app with shaking hands. My investment account, the one I'd been building since residency, the one that was supposed to be for our kids' college fund, had been liquidated 3 weeks ago. Authorization signature, mine. Except I'd never signed anything. I zoomed in on the digital signature. It was good, almost perfect. But the capital A was wrong. Too round. I always made mine sharp, angular, like a triangle. He'd forged my signature. I sat back, staring at the screen. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Then I remembered something. A phone call. 6 weeks ago. Late at night. I'd come home early from a shift, exhausted, and Ethan was in his office with the door closed, his voice low, careful. I'd stood in the hallway, not meaning to eavesdrop, just too tired to announce myself. She won't notice, he'd said. Amara trusts me blindly. By the time she figures it out, everything will be transferred. The house, the accounts, everything. A pause. No, she's too busy saving lives to save herself. Then he'd laughed. I told myself I'd misheard. That he was talking about work, about a client, about anything else. Because the alternative was unthinkable. I'd walked away, pretended I'd just gotten home, kissed him hello like nothing was wrong. God, I'd been such a fool. My phone rang. Mrs. Chen from down the street. Amara? Honey, I don't want to upset you, but I think you should know something. I closed my eyes. Tell me. We saw him, your husband, about 3 weeks ago. He was moving furniture into your place. Baby furniture. A crib, a changing table. And there was a woman with him, blonde, pregnant. Her voice dropped. We've seen her there multiple times. She has keys. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. Amara. I hung up, sat there in the cold morning light. And I understood. This wasn't an affair. It wasn't even about love. This was a plan, a systematic, calculated theft of everything I'd built. He'd married her while married to me, forged my signatures, transferred my assets, was moving his new family into my house, the house my grandmother died to give me. And he'd done it all while I was at the hospital, saving lives. While I was being exactly who he needed me to be. Too tired, too trusting, too good to see what was right in front of me. If you've ever found truth in the quiet moments after pain, you know what this part feels like. That terrible, clarifying moment when everything suddenly makes sense. Thank you to everyone who supports these stories. Your kindness keeps hope alive for people still finding their voice after betrayal. I opened a new browser tab. Typed, Family Law Attorney Manhattan. Then, Forensic Accountant New York. Then, Detective Mike Chen. I made 3 phone calls. Scheduled 3 appointments. And then I did something I hadn't done in 4 days. I smiled. Not from happiness. Not from forgiveness. But from understanding. He'd taken everything from me while I slept. Now I was awake. And I was a surgeon. I knew exactly where to cut. There comes a point when silence stops meaning defeat. It becomes preparation. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd collapsed 4 days ago, and I felt different. Lighter. Not healed but focused, like a scalpel finding its mark. The morning sun came through the window, hitting the empty coffee cup Ethan had left in the sink. I'd washed it finally, dried it, put it away in the back of the cabinet where I wouldn't see it again. Small action, big meaning. I opened my laptop. First, I logged into every account we shared and downloaded 12 years of statements, every transaction, every transfer, every lie, documented in neat rows of numbers. Second, I called my bank and froze our joint accounts. Emergency protective measure. I told them. My voice steady. Professional. The voice of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Are you sure, Dr. Hart? The manager asked gently. I've never been more sure of anything. Third, I changed the locks. Called a locksmith at 9 a.m., had new keys by noon. The sound of the deadbolt sliding into place felt like an exhale I'd been holding for years. Each action was a ritual of liberation, each keystroke a knife cutting through chains I hadn't known I was wearing. My phone rang. Ethan. I stared at it, let it ring 4 times before answering. Amara. His voice was panicked, raw. What the hell did you do? The accounts are frozen, I can't access anything. I know. My voice was soft, almost gentle. I'm sorry, I needed time to think. Silence on his end. Then, think about what? About us. About fixing this. I let my voice crack just slightly. Maybe we can work through this, Ethan. If you help me understand. I could hear him breathing. Could hear the exact moment he decided I was still the woman he'd married, still trusting, still salvageable. Really? His voice shifted, warmer. Amara, God, I've been so scared you'd never forgive me. I didn't say I forgive you, I said I want to understand. Right, yes, of course. He was scrambling now, eager. Can we meet? Talk in person? Not yet. I need a few more days. But Ethan? I paused. Don't do anything else without telling me. No more surprises. Promise me. I promise. Jesus, Amara, thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance. I hung up. Sat there for a moment in the quiet. It's funny how silence can sound like thunder when guilt starts to echo. For years, I mistook generosity for love. Now, I'm learning the quiet math of self-respect. That afternoon, I drove to Lila's condo, the one I didn't know existed until Detective Chen showed me the address, the one Ethan had been paying for with my money. I brought a fruit basket, organic, expensive, the kind of thing a concerned doctor would bring to a recovering patient. She answered the door in yoga pants and one of Ethan's Columbia sweatshirts. My stomach twisted, but I smiled. Lila. Hi. I'm Dr. Hart. From the ER. Her face went pale. What are you? I came to check on you. And the baby. I kept my voice professional, warm. May I come in? She hesitated. But what could she say? I'd saved her life. Sure, okay. The condo was beautiful, modern, furnished with things I recognized from our joint credit card statements, the ones Ethan said were for office expenses. I sat on her couch, accepted the water she offered with shaking hands. "How are you feeling?" I asked. "I'm okay. The baby's okay." She wouldn't meet my eyes. "That's good. That's really good." I sipped the water, watched her carefully. "Lila, I'm not here to fight. I'm here because..." I let my voice break. "Because I'm trying to understand. And because, despite everything, I'm still a doctor. I still care about my patients." She started crying, real tears streaming down her pretty face. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I never meant I didn't know he was still. He told me you were separated." "It's okay." I reached across, squeezed her hand. Left my fingerprints on her water glass when I set it down. "It's not your fault." We talked for 20 minutes. I asked about her pregnancy timeline, her medical history, her family. She told me everything, desperate to be absolved by the woman she'd wronged. When I left, I hugged her, told her to take care of herself. And I left the tiny recording device borrowed from Detective Chen tucked behind a photo frame on her bookshelf. My phone buzzed constantly over the next 3 days. "Ethan, can we please talk?" "Ethan, I love you. I never stopped loving you." "Ethan, why won't you answer?" "His mother's friends. We heard what happened. Are you all right?" "His colleagues. Ethan's asking about you. Should we tell him you called?" I didn't respond to any of them. My silence had already spoken. Instead, I met with my lawyer. Signed papers, filed motions, requested forensic audits, and paternity tests and injunctions. Each signature felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. "This is going to get ugly," my lawyer warned. "Good," I said. "Let it." On day 7, I received an email from the private investigator. Subject: Preliminary Findings, L. Brennan. I opened it. Read it twice. Then I forwarded it to my lawyer with a single line. "File everything, I'm ready." I looked out my kitchen window at the city waking up, at the light catching on the buildings, turning everything gold. For the first time, I didn't need them to hear me. My silence had already spoken. And now? Now it was time to let the truth roar. The hospital board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. on a Thursday. I arrived 15 minutes early, walked through those familiar corridors like I'd done 1,000 times before, but everything felt different now, sharper, clearer. The conference room was on the 8th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Mahogany table. 12 chairs. I took the one facing the door. My lawyer, Patricia Chen, no relation to the detective, sat to my right. Detective Chen himself sat behind us, quiet, professional. And next to him, Marcus Webb, the hospital's legal counsel, with a briefcase full of documents. At 2:03, the door opened. Ethan walked in first. He looked good, confident. He'd always been good at that, walking into rooms like he owned them. Behind him, Lila, 8 months pregnant now, her hand protectively over her belly. And behind them, 2 board members I recognized, Dr. Susan Park and Director James Richardson. Ethan's eyes found mine across the table. I didn't look away. "Amara." He said my name like a prayer, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. "Thank you for agreeing to meet. I think we can resolve this privately, without..." "Sit down, Mr. Hart." Patricia's voice cut through his like a scalpel. He blinked. "I'm sorry. Who are you?" "Patricia Chen, Dr. Hart's attorney." She gestured to the empty chairs. "Please, sit." They sat. Lila looked terrified. "Good." Dr. Park cleared her throat. "Dr. Hart, we've called this meeting because Mr. Hart has filed a formal complaint alleging unprofessional conduct, conflict of interest, and emotional misconduct during his treatment in our ER. These are serious accusations that could affect your medical license." I nodded slowly. "I understand. He claims you deliberately delayed his care, that you made threatening statements to Miss Brennan." "Hart," Ethan corrected. "It's Mrs. Hart now." "Actually," Patricia said pleasantly, "it's Miss Brennan. Since her marriage to your client occurred while he was still legally married to Dr. Hart, making it void from inception under New York law." The room went quiet. Lila's face drained of color. Ethan leaned forward. That's not what this meeting is about." You're right. I spoke for the first time, my voice steady and cold. This meeting is about the truth. So let's talk about it. I nodded to Marcus, who opened his briefcase. On the night of November 15th, I treated 2 patients involved in a motor vehicle accident. Both survived due to the excellent work of our trauma team. I assisted in post-surgical care as assigned by the attending physician, Dr. Morrison, who can confirm I acted with complete professionalism. I paused. What I did after my shift, however, is more interesting. Marcus slid the first document across the table. Financial records showing systematic theft from Dr. Hart's accounts over 18 months. Approximately $73,000 transferred to accounts controlled by Mr. Hart and Miss Brennan. Ethan's jaw tightened. Those were joint accounts. This one wasn't. Another document. Dr. Hart's inheritance investment account, liquidated 3 weeks ago with a forged signature. We've had a handwriting analyst confirm the forgery. I never. Third item. Marcus was relentless. Property deed for Dr. Hart's home in Astoria, purchased with her grandmother's inheritance. We found draft documents in Mr. Hart's possession, attempting to transfer ownership to Miss Brennan. You went through my things? Ethan's voice rose. That's illegal. Detective Chen obtained them through legal channels after Miss Brennan voluntarily surrendered them during questioning. Marcus smiled thinly. Next item. He pressed play on a small recording device. Ethan's voice filled the room. She won't notice. Amara trusts me blindly. By the time she figures it out, everything will be transferred. Then Lila, laughing, God, she must be so pathetic. Does she really not see what's happening? Ethan again. She's too busy saving lives to save herself. That's what makes her perfect. I watched Ethan's face crumble. Watched Lila start crying, shaking her head frantically. That was taken out of context, Ethan stammered. There's more, I spoke quietly. But I think the final document is most relevant. Patricia slid the last envelope across the table. DNA results from the prenatal paternity test ordered by the court. Ethan Hart is excluded as the biological father with 99.9% certainty. The silence was absolute. Lila's sobbing was the only sound. Ethan stared at the paper like it might explode. No, that's not possible. The actual father, Detective Chen said calmly, is a Manhattan real estate developer named Marcus Ashford. Miss Brennan was in a relationship with him until approximately 3 months before meeting your client. The timeline suggests she knew she was pregnant when she began pursuing Mr. Hart. Lila's face was in her hands now, her whole body shaking. Ethan turned to her slowly. You told me you promised me. I'm sorry, she gasped. I'm so sorry. I thought you had money, I thought. You thought? His voice broke. I destroyed my marriage for you. Mr. Hart. Dr. Park's voice was ice. This meeting is over. Your complaint against Dr. Hart is dismissed. Furthermore, your contractor relationship with this hospital is terminated effective immediately. You can't. We can. And we are. She stood. Security will escort you both out. I stood too. Looked at Ethan directly for the first time. Thank you for your honesty, Ethan, I said softly. I needed all of this in writing. His eyes met mine, desperate, pleading, broken. I felt nothing. Just the clean, cold clarity of truth. Security appeared. Walked them toward the door. Ethan looked back once. Amara, please? I turned away. Looked out the window at the city stretched below. And I finally let myself breathe. After the verdict, silence became my favorite sound. It was the sound of justice finally breathing. I didn't go back to the hospital for 2 weeks. Medical leave, they called it. Self-care, Rita said when she dropped off a casserole and hugged me without asking questions. I spent those days in my house with the new locks and the quiet rooms and the space that finally felt like mine again. The first morning, I opened all the windows. Let the cold November air sweep through every room, clearing out everything that smelled like him, like lies, like the life I thought I'd built. I boxed up his remaining clothes, his books, his stupid Columbia coffee mug that he loved so much, left them on the curb with a sign, free. They were gone by noon. The car, the Audi he drove, the one I'd bought him for our 5th anniversary, was repossessed 3 days after the board meeting. Turns out when you stop paying the loan on a vehicle registered in your name, the bank comes to collect. I watched from my window as the tow truck drove away with it. Felt nothing. Detective Chen called me on day 4. Thought you'd want to know, he said. Lila Brennan's been served. Insurance fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit financial fraud. And the medical board's opening an inquiry into the fertility clinic. Turns out she falsified her medical history on multiple intake forms. What happens to her? Charges are pending. But she's been evicted from the condo. Apparently Ethan stopped paying rent when his accounts got frozen. He paused. She's staying at a women's shelter in Queens now. I thought about that. About Lila Young, beautiful, pregnant with another man's child, sitting in a shelter, surrounded by women fleeing violence and poverty. Women she'd probably considered beneath her. And Ethan? Living with his college roommate in Brooklyn. Lost his consulting contract. No firm in the city will touch him after what came out. Chen's voice softened. How are you doing, Dr. Hart? I'm breathing, I said. That's enough for now. On day 7 Ethan showed up. I was in the garden, pulling dead leaves from the flower beds my grandmother had planted. Preparing the soil for spring, even though winter hadn't truly started yet. I heard the gate creak, looked up. He stood there in jeans, and a wrinkled button-down, unshaven, eyes red-rimmed. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. Amara. His voice cracked. Please. I just need 5 minutes. I stood slowly, brushed the dirt from my hands. You have 3. I'm sorry. He took a step forward. God, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I got lost. I made terrible choices, but I never stopped loving you. I swear to God, I never... Stop. He stopped. I looked at him, really looked, and tried to find the man I'd married 12 years ago. The one who'd smiled at me over mixed-up coffee cups. The one I'd believed in so completely I'd reshaped my entire life around him. He wasn't there anymore. Maybe he'd never been there at all. You taught me something, Ethan, I said quietly. Love without respect destroys. It destroys slowly, quietly, in ways you don't notice until there's nothing left. I paused. You destroyed everything. Our marriage, my trust, my dreams of a family. You took 12 years of my life and spent them on someone else. I know. Tears streamed down his face. But we can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can... No. The word hung in the cold air between us. You made your choices. You forged my signature. You stole my money. You married another woman in my name. My voice stayed steady, calm. You didn't just betray me, Ethan. You erased me. You tried to replace me like I was furniture you'd outgrown. Please. Now go rebuild yourself. Without me. I walked past him, back toward my house. Amara, his voice broke. Don't you care what happens to me? I stopped at the door, looked back once. I used to, I said. That was the problem. Then I went inside, locked the door. And I didn't look back again. People talk. Of course they talk. I heard through Rita that Ethan and Lila had a screaming match outside the courthouse, that she'd blamed him for ruining her life, that he'd called her a liar and a con artist in front of everyone. I heard that the real father, Marcus Ashford, wanted nothing to do with the baby, that Lila was trying to sue him for child support. I heard that Ethan was sleeping on couches, borrowing money, trying to find work outside the city where his name hadn't been dragged through every professional network. I didn't need to ruin them. Their lies had already done that. They used to whisper that I'd lost my mind. Now they avoided their own reflections. Some debts don't need to be collected. Life has its own way of balancing the books. On my first day back at Mount Sinai, I walked through those doors at 6 a.m., just like always. Rita saw me coming and smiled. Welcome home, Dr. Hart. I smiled back. It's good to be home. And it was. After the noise fades, what's left isn't victory. It's understanding. I returned to work 3 weeks after the board meeting. The ER welcomed me back the way it always had, with chaos, with urgency, with the sharp smell of antiseptic and the sound of monitors beeping like a symphony of survival. It felt like coming home. Rita hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe. Missed you, girl. Missed this, I said, looking around at the organized madness. Missed knowing what I'm supposed to do. She squeezed my hand. You always knew. You just forgot for a while. She was right. For 12 years, I'd been so busy being someone's wife that I'd forgotten who I was before that, before the sacrifices, before the late nights waiting for someone who was building a different life. I was Amara, Dr. Amara Bennett. I'd taken back my maiden name. I was an ER physician. I saved lives. That was my gift, my purpose, the thing that made me me. Not someone's accessory, not someone's bank account. Me. The first patient I treated that night was a woman in her 50s, heart attack, stable, but scared. Am I going to die? She whispered, gripping my hand. Not tonight, I told her. Not on my watch. She lived. Of course she lived. And when her family arrived, her daughters, her husband, all crying with relief, I watched them hold her and I felt something crack open in my chest. Not pain, something else. Peace. I bought a new place 6 months later. A one-bedroom in Greenpoint with huge windows and a view of the Manhattan skyline. Small, but mine. Paid for with money I earned. Decorated the way I wanted. No blue door. I chose red instead. Red like a heartbeat, red like survival. I started volunteering at a women's shelter on my days off. The same one where Lila had stayed, though she'd moved on by then back to wherever women like her go when their plans fall apart. I taught the women there about finances, about opening their own accounts, about recognizing the signs of financial abuse, about how love should never cost you your dignity. One woman, Maria, a mother of 3 who'd escaped a 15-year marriage, asked me after class, "How do you do it? How do you trust again?" I thought about that. I don't know if you do, I said honestly, but I think you learn to trust yourself, and that's more important. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you. Thank you, I said, for being brave enough to leave. Justice isn't about watching them fall. It's about standing again without hate. I used to lie awake at night imagining Ethan suffering, imagining Lila regretting everything, wanting them to hurt the way they'd hurt me. But somewhere along the way I stopped. Not because I forgave them, not entirely, but because holding on to that anger was like drinking poison and expecting them to die. They made their choices, they'd live with the consequences. I had my own life to build. One night, almost a year after everything fell apart, I was walking home from my shift. Dawn breaking over the city, that soft blue-gray light that makes everything look clean and new. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Dr. Bennett? A woman's voice. Young. Scared. I don't know if you remember me. Lila Brennan. I needed to say I'm sorry. For everything. You saved my life. And I stopped walking. Stood there in the middle of the sidewalk while the city woke up around me. I remember, I said quietly. I know it doesn't change anything. I know I don't deserve. You're right. It doesn't change anything. My voice was calm. Not cruel, just honest. But I hope you've learned something from this. I hope you learn to build a life that doesn't require destroying someone else's. Silence. Then, softly. I'm trying. Good, keep trying. I hung up. Kept walking. And I realized something. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't hate Ethan. I just didn't care. That was freedom. If my story teaches anything, it's this. Kindness without boundaries isn't love, it's surrender. I used to believe love meant giving everything. Now I know love also means knowing when to stop. It means saying I deserve better and actually believing it. It means walking away from people who see your generosity as weakness. It means understanding that you can be good and still protect yourself. That night, I stood on my balcony overlooking the city, my city, the one I'd worked in, bled in, survived in, and I watched the lights flicker on one by one. Millions of people, millions of stories. Some of them probably just like mine. And I thought, this is what justice feels like. Not the courtroom kind, not the dramatic kind you see in movies, but the quiet kind, the kind that comes when you finally understand that you were never the problem, that your love was real, your sacrifice was real, your pain was real, and so is your healing. Justice gave me back my name, but peace gave me back myself. If you've ever lost yourself trying to love someone who only saw your worth in numbers, I hope my story reminds you, it's never too late to choose yourself. Thank you for keeping these stories alive, stories where justice doesn't shout, it heals. I finished my coffee, watched the sun rise over Brooklyn, and I smiled. Not because everything was perfect, but because I was finally free.